Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for Fruit Bearing Family. And some of you will be watching us on YouTube or Facebook or honestly, wherever we want to post it. We'll probably email it to you too because it's a good day. And some of you will be listening to us on podcast. My guest today is Ashley Price. And yes, I know her name is on the screen. I can see it, but I always look at my notes because I'm so afraid I'm going to just like butcher somebody's name. So Ashley, we're so glad that you are here with us today. And those of you that are joining us, so our Fruit Bearing Family, our membership that we have and just some freebies that we do are all about really parenting with purpose and really having a fruit bearing family. And so part of that is joining with people like Ashley, who also has a membership and who also does great freebies. And guess what her passion is? Oh yeah, parenting with purpose and having a fruit bearing family. And so though she may word it differently, it's still God's heart for all of those things. So Ashley, thanks for being here today. And you are in Georgia.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. So tell us a little bit about you. Let's start with your family. We want to get to know you.
Yeah, so my name's Ashley, and I'm married to my super awesome husband, Glenn. I'm like pointing to him like he's over here or something, right? Like he normally is. So normally he's in my office with me. So normally, he'd be over there if you're watching this. That's where
And
he
those
would be.
that are listening on podcast, now you have to go watch the video because we have all of our arm motions today. We're like crazy blonde women. Okay,
I know,
so
right? And I'm Italian, so there's always going to be the hand movement.
I love it.
So normally he's over there.
Yeah.
That's where hubby usually is. So anyways, I'm married to my husband, Glenn, and we have two boys, Oliver and Wyatt, and then two black labs that we kidnapped. So we're dog nappers.
Yes, that's a full house. And tell us how old your boys are.
They're 6 and 8, and Wyatt would kill me if I didn't say that he's going to be 7 soon. So
because that's a big deal. Absolutely, we're on a countdown.
Yeah, we are on a count. I mean, it's not until like Thanksgiving time, but
doesn't matter. He sees himself as almost 7.
He's almost 7. So we need to make that very clear.
So before we get into you just sharing about really what your lifestyle is and how people connect with you, I want to tell everybody before we get in deeper how they can connect with you. So if you're watching this on video, you're going to see this little ticker bar going across the bottom that is reminding you that you can connect with Ashley at pricelesslyimperfect.com. And then in our show notes, wherever you're catching us on podcast or video, we will actually have some other places that you can connect with her, including her social media handles, so that you can stay connected. And we'll repeat this at the end. And the reason why I'm telling you now before we get too far into it, because as she's talking, you'll be like, oh, that's amazing. How do I get in touch with her again? Don't sweat it. You don't even have to grab a pen. Okay. You'll just come back and revisit it. And we will have links for you to make your life simple. Okay. So tell us about what pricelesslyimperfect.com, if somebody were to go there, what they're going to find there.
I love that. So what you're really going to find is just like some good, wholesome, biblical truth about what it means to be a Christian wife and mother. And we just kind of talk about homemaking and homeschooling. That's the gist of it.
So tell me, and we were talking before we went live on some of, some of the cool stuff that you guys do. So tell them if they went there, I called it before we went on the air, like an eclectic or well-rounded, depending on what verbiage you want to use, but it's so cool. Tell them, I don't want to say the random things because they're so purposeful, but tell them the things that they could find when they go there.
Yeah, it's like a Christian mom's like Netflix, I guess is what you want to call it. So you'll find stuff like you could like import like my kitchen if you wanted to, and learn how to
go do this right now. But
you could like learn how to like make bread from scratch, or the soup. Everybody I always get asked how to make potato soup from scratch. Because it's my kid's favorite thing on the planet.
This is a great recording. Yes.
Right. At least it's the afternoon, so maybe it's close to dinner time. But we also have like homeschool resources and the connections that I've made. And I have like memberships to like homeschool type organizations that they just told me to give my passwords to all of my people. And so I just give them to everybody. I'm like,
Yes, with
here,
permission. And you're like, I'm not even cheating, I promise.
right? I'm not
They
even
gave
cheating.
permission.
They told me to give you guys all of my login, so here you go.
Yes, I
Because
love
they
it.
told me just to sign up as a teacher and use it as like a classroom account. And so like we just have classroom accounts for all of my people, and we really talk about like what is God calling us to do as wives and mothers, and really asking us to examine our hearts and
Yeah.
where we are, and look at our own behaviors and ask ourselves if we're letting God kind of parent with us and be in our marriage with us, or if we're letting the world kind of do it with us.
And one of the things that we were talking about before we went live that I want to make sure that we talk about now. So just so you know, before we went live, this is like, I know, not the professional podcast and video, because we want this to be very coffee like. We talked forever. We actually
Yes.
recorded like because we just chatted because okay, sisterhood. But one of the things that we were talking about, and I just want you to share this while we're live, actually, for those listening, is um, that find that people think that living a biblical wife lifestyle and a biblical family lifestyle, that people, even those that are Christ followers, that they find it odd. So just talk a
Yes.
little bit about that. And we're not being critical. It's like coming into an understanding. Like they're just not
Mm,
there yet in their understanding of the biblical model for family. And I
yeah.
know one size doesn't fit all. Not everybody has to homeschool, not everybody has to make their own bread, but there really is this foundation of what does it look like to bring God's heart into your home. So just talk a little bit of just your experience about that.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people call me like a Puritan. I actually have had people like lost like immediate family members right when they hear about my marriage dynamic, because we do follow like an Ephesians 5 model, like where my husband's head of household. And as soon as people hear the word submissive, right, they're like cut off, right? They
Yes.
don't want to hear it. They're like, ugh, this is, they can't hear that word. And then when I explained it, I'm like, well, we don't have two presidents of the United States, right? Like,
Right.
right,
Yes.
right. Like my husband's the president, I'm the vice president, and that's just how decisions are made. And the vice Mike Pence isn't brainless, right? Like he had thoughts and opinions and insights, and so when I explained it to people, they're like, "Oh, that makes much more sense."
Yeah.
And so we've really, it's almost like I've had to work extremely hard to put it into a context maybe that people can understand these days.
Yes,
Um,
I find as well, because I just had this conversation with someone, and our listeners, don't be offended by this conversation. If you were like, women
yeah.
should not teach the word, you're not going to offend me, okay, at all. So just walk away and know I still love you. You have to love me. But someone said, how do you wrap those verses around husband leading and you teaching the Bible and you preaching and teaching and what have you? And I said, it's so funny. I don't feel like that they contradict one another. I feel like they're so complementary. My husband is a huge fan. He said, why would you not teach? Do you know what I mean? And so when the husband is the head of the household, like what you're talking about, he's to represent Christ. Christ never tells the body to not walk in their identity as a Christian. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I love what you're saying. Like, if you're the VP of the house, why that's not a less than. It's like
Yeah.
this beautiful complementary thing that happens. So anyway, so I absolutely love that. Love it. Do you find that as you have people that chastise you for your Puritanism, which I think is hilarious, that right, people totally have that because they just don't have a full understanding, and that's okay. That's just where they're at. But do you find also that people sort of either come out of the woodwork, or as they see you walk out this life, that they start asking more questions?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I get it's almost like kind of like funny, right? Because at first, like they make fun of me a little bit,
Right,
right? And then it's like, well, wait a minute, why are you and your husband so happy?
right.
Why are your children so well behaved? Why do your children respect you so much?
Mhm.
Why are you as a unit so like happy whatever situation you guys are in?
Yes.
And seem like you can just the joy like radiates off of your photos. Like what is going on in your household now? And so it's just so funny. I'm like, oh, that thing that you mocked me for a minute ago.
Yes.
Let me now explain it to you. Actually, just had this conversation with my husband last night because he was like, "You have a lot of non-Christian friends," and he's like, how do you do it?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, they're not. Maybe they won't always be that way. You know, I can just continue to walk in
Yes.
the light and hope that maybe one day that influence rubs off. Maybe one day they'll see
Yes.
why we're so happy.
And I think the beauty of that also is that we are supposed to be God's light in the world. And so
Yes.
that doesn't mean that you avoid non believers. It means that you're
Yeah.
reflecting God's kindness to them,
Yeah.
And it's
Jesus
like,
met
how
the
are
sinners where they are.
yes. And you're
That was
like, I
exactly
really
what,
could have coffee with an unbeliever. It's okay. But it means that I don't change who I am,
it's exactly
of
what I
who
said.
I am with Jesus. And do you also find that just because you are parenting with purpose and you really have, I like to call it a holistic approach to family, meaning that
Mhm.
it's not just schoolwork and it's not just chores, but it's really taking God's word and applying it to all of those things and heart issues and how you communicate with one another. It's like
Yeah.
the well-rounded life because God's heart is to be all up in our business. You know what I mean? He's
Yes.
not just in our business when we take the kids to Sunday school or church,
Right.
or when we're taking them to the grandparents' house. We're like, we need you to behave. Do you know? Like
Yeah.
God wants to be in their hearts. So it's a heart thing.
Mhm.
It's, how our kids act and how we act as parents when no one's watching because it's a godly character. It's reflecting who he is. But don't you find that sometimes people see, like what you said, they see you happy or they see whatever, and they somehow think that, oh, you have it 100% together, so nobody must fight in your house. And they're looking for a magic bullet because they don't realize that it doesn't mean people aren't arguing or there's some chaos, but it's how you reconcile and
Yes.
conflict. So just talk a little bit about that and your thoughts on that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So it's so funny because I posted one time on Instagram, it was like 12 months ago, but I was just having like a bad day. I woke up and my 8-year-old, the minute he woke up, it was argumentative.
Yeah,
He was just in one of those days.
it was a flesh day.
It was just right. It was just a day, and he normally isn't like that, but it was just I was like busy with work, and right, it was like right at the beginning of the pandemic too, and so he was just argumentative. All it was a bad day,
It's where you want to hit
and
the reset button and everybody get out of bed and
yeah,
restart the day.
I was like, oh my goodness. And then my husband was supposed to be home at 3 o'clock, and I called him at like 3:30. I'm like, hey, what's your ETA? And he said, hey, I'm running late. I won't be home till about 5:36. And I was hysterical at the kitchen table, and and the two boys, of course, they're so little, they just sat there and looked at me like, "My mom is we're just gonna go." Like, "We're gonna go." And, they avoided me for like an hour, came out and they're like, "We don't know what we did wrong, but we're just gonna, like, apologize. We don't know, what's wrong."
Yes,
You and of course, then we all loved on each other, and
yes,
we had a very real conversation about how I was feeling, and that's something I know we try to do because we're like we're not perfect. We're
yes.
brutally honest with our kids. We're like we are
And
not
sometimes
perfect.
it's us apologizing to our kids, which is a biblical
Yeah.
model. Yes,
Yes, all the time.
absolutely.
We're like, we need a savior just as much as you do. Like, well, I'm not Jesus. Like,
Right.
I am not a perfect parent. And then I posted about it, like 2 days later on Instagram. I'm like, listen, like I bawled my eyes out, like I wasn't a good parent today. I wasn't this, I wasn't that. And people are like, wow, like you're not perfect. Like you don't like bake cookies and like sing kumbaya every day, like in
Right,
your
you're not
living
Mary
room.
Poppins every single
Y-
day?
like what? Like, and my husband, I like said to him, I was like, do people really like think this? Like, is people can't really like. I know I don't look at influencers and think that their life is sunshine and rainbows every day because I know mine's not. And he was like,
Yes.
well, yeah, people really think that unless you live this lifestyle,
Mhm.
people. that's how people perceive you. And I was like, well, I need to be way more honest that I am not perfect all the time.
But, you know,
You
one of the
know?
things that I love about what you were saying is that you did share those things, and I think that sometimes there's this balance of, you know, some people, I don't want to say overshare, but that they share so much of the negative that it's like complaining and murmuring. Do you know what I mean? And there's not like, hey, but I still have joy in the middle of, you know, the chaos or whatever it is. And I think
Yes.
the balance, you know, that I really feel like is very scriptural is that, you know, the Bible tells us to mourn and rejoice with one another. So it means that
Yes.
you're going to have bad days. You know, we see David, you know, in scripture. I read through Psalms and it is like a seismograph of him being so like in despair and like, God, I know you're still good, but like, I'm not feeling great right now. To other days, you know, I call them like mountaintop days. But God wants our realness. He wants
Yeah.
our realness. And I think that sometimes when people see believers walking out a peaceful lifestyle, that they think peace is perfection. And
Yeah.
really, the peace comes from inviting the Prince of Peace into your home.
Agreed.
And it's very different. And so I think that sometimes, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, that sometimes people will see say your family and they see everybody has like this joy, which we know it's the joy of the Lord, not even just our circumstances, but it carries over to how we parent and how our family interacts. Do you think that for some people that, you know, and I realize it's the enemy and it's their own thinking and it's our culture, that they see that and they say, I will never be like that. And they don't realize it's a process. They think it's like a switch or something, or that they're broken themselves. Do you think that sometimes that's how they feel until they get to know you and you get to step them through and mentor them? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because I wasn't actually raised a Christian,
Okay.
right? So I'm actually the only Christian in my family, and I was raised very drastically different than I am now. And before I became a Christian, I was very broken. I was a you know I went through something very traumatic in college, and after that experience, I drank really heavily. I had tried recreational drugs, and I just thought I was like a waste of a human being, and that was kind of going to be my life. And then when I found Jesus and I became a Christian, it was like it really was kind of like, oh, like I didn't have to suffer kind of through that, and I can, and it was like a gradual kind of process, but I
But
did
you had
have,
joy right away,
but
which
I
is the
did it.
beautiful part.
It was
Yes.
it was like joy right away, but I did it. It was like I saw I had neighbors that were Christian, and that's actually how I became a Christian. Is my neighbors invited me to a Bible study at their house.
Oh, I
Um
love it.
and they were so sweet. She was my neighbor's the sweetest woman ever. I was friends with her children growing up, and she knocked on my door and said, "Come to Bible study. We have snacks, and I know you're home because I can see your car's home during Bible
Right.
study." And I was like in graduate school and poor, and she was like, "Come, I'll feed you." And I was like,
Yes.
"Okay, sure." And and she was the greatest. But I used to see her family like so happy and things, and I was like, "This is not, I am not you. Like I can't be you. I've been through too much. This isn't for me." And it was only because she reached out and extended, Jesus's grace and things to me, and showed that to me, that I felt like, oh, that this is for me. I can have this. And so I feel like, yeah, we have such a responsibility.
And I love what you said about she literally knocked on your door. And,
Yeah.
sometimes we think about, and I'll try not to get preachy here, but because this is a big deal for my heart, is that people want to outsource the Great Commission and outsource discipleship. Do you know what I mean? And so they'll be
Yes.
like, I'm just going to invite them to church or social media. I'm just going to post on social media that, we're doing whatever at church. And, they'll come if they want to. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. And what I love is that we are called, every Christ follower, it's not
Yeah.
pastor's job. It's not an evangelist job. It has nothing to do with your spiritual gifts. As a Christ follower, you are called to lead and disciple, which means you're called to mentor people, teach. You can call it whatever you want, but you're
Right.
basically called to love people. Do you know what I mean? And we
Right.
see that with Jesus. He went to where his disciples were. He wasn't like, here's a message. Could you go deliver this to them and tell them I want to meet them? He went physically where they were. And I love that your neighbor was walking out, love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Because she knew Jesus, and how great that she went to her neighbor and just did this invite. And she didn't try to push the Bible down your throat. She just, through hospitality,
Yeah.
was just able to like nurture you and say, like, you have value. I want you in my house. So simple. So
So,
simple.
yeah.
And it's like what you see kids do on the playground. You know what I mean? When they're like, hey, come play with us, the 5-year-olds, they get
Yeah.
it. But for some reason, as
As
Christ
adults,
followers,
we like,
sometimes,
right.
yes, we just don't seem to get it. And so, what I love about your testimony is that people don't realize when they see your family happy the way that they are, and how you saw your neighbor and her family happy, is that it's Jesus being reflected out.
Yeah.
But people don't know that yet. And this is the thing for anybody listening or watching, before we're even talking about how you can connect with Ashley or can connect in with me, our heart is for you to connect with Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that we each are doing in our memberships or websites, whatever you want to call them, it is really a ministry to encourage you, to help you reflect more like Jesus, not to reflect more like Ashley or more like Renae, but how do you reflect Jesus more in your home, in your marriage? How do you understand God's word more? That his word is never contradictory, even one verse against another, but they're complementary. We just might not understand how they complement each other yet, but
Yeah.
we grow in that wisdom. And so I want to encourage you that if you are listening, whether you are a Christ follower now or you are not, and you're like, this just sounds like you are talking some foreign language. Okay, listen, do not get overwhelmed. This is why what me and Ashley do is so great. We want to baby step you. We want to encourage you to say, you are not on this journey alone. And do not buy into the lie that you cannot have peace in your family. You cannot have the joy of the Lord. And that God does not want to shame you. He doesn't think you're less than. It doesn't matter what you brought with you. You know, Ashley shared her, testimony of what it was like for her before she came to Jesus. My testimony is the absolute opposite. I accepted Christ at 5. I was raised in a Christian home. Here's the beauty. We were both sinners, even at 5. Okay. I was selfish, I had sinned. Jesus's grace is the same. He didn't say, well, hey, you're a bigger sinner. You're a sinner. Like God's grace was just poured out on both of us. So I wanted to share that before we even share how Ashley wants to serve you and to connect you with just her walk with Jesus. Because really, our memberships, the stuff that we're doing, we're not saying, hey, we are so much better than you, so I need you to learn and walk like me. We're saying, listen, we are on this journey with you. Let's just walk like Jesus, okay? And there's going to be days Ashley's going to post on her Instagram that she cried at the table again. And, same for me. And we're going to say, guess what? There's room at our table. Pull up a chair, cry with us, make me feel better, have coffee. And then we're going to say, okay, Jesus, what would you like us to do? And to go from there. So Ashley, tell us about really, so your website, Pricelessly Imperfect. You talked about what people can find on there. And before we get into your membership that you're going to be launching, and what that's going to be, I want you to tell them the cool homeschool stuff that they're going to find on Pricelessly Imperfect, including what you were sharing with me before we went on the air. Because I just
Yeah.
think it's so cool.
Oh my gosh, she is the coolest. Yeah, so we have been talking a ton about homeschooling. With everything going on, there's just been a great need for everybody wanting to know more about homeschooling. And I'm a big fan of homeschooling.
Yeah.
So there's just a ton of articles and things that we've recently written about homeschooling, so you can find that. But then we also put together a list of like homeschool resources. So like a bunch of free apps and all those cool, like, free classroom type things that we've set up. You can download those passwords. You can get like one-on-ones with marine biologists. Like we,
That was the coolest. Walk us through what that
yeah,
experience like was with your boys and what they told you.
yeah. So this is so crazy. So my son, so this is so funny. So the Atlantic Shark White or Great Shark White Conservancy or whatever, they were doing a shark story hour at the beginning of the pandemic. And I was like, okay, this sounds cool. They were doing it on Facebook Live once a week. And so my son was like, this is cool. I want to read shark stories. And so he was obsessed with Jacques Cousteau. He can still tell you anything you want to know about him, and he's 6, right? He's
Yes.
obsessed. He will tell you anything you want to know about this man. And so it became like an obsession for him. Like he wanted to know everything he can about the ocean and ocean explorers and marine biologists. And so I was just like, I wonder if we can get like more info or something. So I just sent them a message on Instagram. I'm like, hey, listen, my 6-year-old is obsessed. And what can we do? And they were like, hey, you want to set up a one-on-one Zoom call?
What?
I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, yes, I want to set up a one-on-one Zoom call. And so they gave him like a 45-minute one-on-one Zoom call where they just like answered all
And
of
these
his
were like
questions.
marine biologists, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it was so cool. I happened to go to we went to the same college because there's very few like marine biology colleges. And I happened to go to the one that they went to. And so we were just like, he just captured his attention for 45 minutes. And they were like, anytime, like you just send people to us and we'll gladly just hop on Zoom and do these. And I was like, what?
That is the
It
coolest.
was
And so can our listeners, our viewers, they can grab that off your website that they'll be able to find that?
Yeah, so I have it in the download for them and, just a link to go to their website, and you can just reach out to them, and they'll totally just send you a Zoom link.
I'm just saying,
Just
that is the
like
coolest thing
it
out there.
was it was so cool. Yeah, I mean, there's so many they have, like, so many cool things, our kids just, like, put together, like, a shark anatomy and stuff, I mean, they do the coolest things over there, so there's a ton of, like, free stuff out there for homeschoolers that
So
you wouldn't
people
even think
need,
about.
yeah, so people definitely need to go to your website so they can just grab that. It's like treasure hunting fun stuff. And
Yeah.
Ashley's already done the hard work for you folks. So
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
don't have to do
saying,
it.
yeah, and you might want to send her just, since you can't well, I guess you could send her cookies through the mail, but maybe just through her website, send her a little contact of like, this is like a contact form hug. Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
for all your work, sister. Okay. Tell us about your membership that you're going to be putting together, the name of it, and what that's kind of going to look like.
I'm so excited. So it's called Prudent Homemaker. And really the goal is to just really get back to these like traditional biblical values.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about it. So we've already recorded like 100 hours of like video training. It's so
Wow. So it's already going to have lots of content. So when this launches, you need to go to her website, get on her list so that you can hear about this stuff.
it's craziness. And we just have there's so much on there, everything from like growing your relationship to with Christ, and things like that, right? We've got like Bible study tips and getting like alone time, right? Like when you have a bunch of
Yes.
kids, right? So
Yeah.
like getting your quiet time in all the way to like how do you care for your sourdough starter
I love it.
and like
I love it.
everything between.
And then you had mentioned to me before we get on the air as well that with this, that there will be a private community to where they can
Yeah.
connect, right?
Yeah, so it's off of Facebook. It's right in the membership. So that way you don't have to worry about like your Aunt Sally like seeing what you're posting or,
Yeah.
somebody like hacking into it so you can be completely open. There's nobody like accidentally like seeing anything you're doing. It's just right all in the community. And then we're doing weekly office hours and monthly challenges. And you can get one-on-one consults with me that way.
I love it. And I know I keep referring before on the air more than I have in any of the other things, but here's the deal. We really were just chatting away before we went
We
on
did.
the air.
We were probably chatting just as long as we've been recording.
No, it's so true. I'm like, but she's got a Red Bull. I had my coffee. We were just doing some girl time
Right.
coffee time. And one of the things, as you know, my two memberships, her membership is they're very styled very much the same way. And here's what I love about this. Some of you may be going, but why are you sharing each other's stuff? Like, isn't that like weird? Don't you want them to be in your membership? Okay, let me just say it like this, friends. It is like, it doesn't matter what church you go to or what denomination that you are, you're all part of the big church. And so
Yeah.
our heart is that you find the community that can serve you in the season that you're in. So I'm just telling you, if you come get some of my freebies and then you go get some of her freebies and you're like, oh, I want that membership. I mean, you can be in both of our memberships. I mean, we're all
Right. We're
about
not
that.
mad.
Okay.
Right.
But the thing that I love is that the God's kingdom is about us encouraging one another, and there's zero competition. And so
Zero.
what you're going to find in Ashley's memberships and her freebies, and the same with mine and other guests that I'll have on, is that all of our hearts are to collectively serve families so that they can reflect God's heart in their home and to just walk with you through what that looks like. And I think the biggest thing that, and I'm going to speak for Ashley, and I know that she'll be on board with this, is we want you to know as a parent that there's no competition with other parents. Like, you are not comparing yourself with me or with Ashley or the parents that are inside of your groups, but you are comparing yourself to Jesus, and in a good way of like, how do I become more like you, knowing that God is giving you grace and mercy. So our heart is that every day you reflect Jesus more in your family today than you did yesterday, including, you know what, if you were crying at the table like Ashley was talking about, guess what? She got to reflect Jesus by having a real conversation with her boys and that whole reconciliation. And anyway, I just love it. Absolutely love it. What is actually the best way for people to hop on your email list so they know when the membership opens and new goodies and all that fun stuff? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, if you just go to Pricelessly Imperfect at that little ticking banner,
Yep.
right at the top banner, when you go there, it says like free resources, and there's a big blue banner with all of our free resources, and that is the best way to get there.
I love it.
I try
So
to make it easy.
yes, absolutely. That's why we have like the little ticker going out at the bottom. We'll put it in the bio. And then when you get to her site, she's also made it easy. So what could be better than that?
Yeah, it's
Um,
the total hop header.
yes, I love it. And if you are a member of my membership or going to be in the future, because I don't know when you're actually going to be listening to this in real time or later time, here's the great deal is I'm hoping to have Ashley back inside our membership to where she's going to go into teacher mode and teach on one area of her expertise. And all I'm going to do is like sit back, drink my coffee while she does that. You know what I mean? And I'll just man the comment board and we're just going to like call it the Ashley Show. So what you will find in inside our memberships is that we love to have other guests on. We're not like, oh, I know everything. It's about bringing other people in and introducing them into our memberships to say, hey, they want to share. And hey, if this person has something that you want to get from them, hey, they also have a membership. And so again, that just collective thing. So we'll get to hear from Ashley again, hopefully sooner than later, right? And so really, it's so me and Ashley can have coffee time before we go on air again. So that's really what we're doing. We're planning some girl time.
Yes.
All right, Ashley, thank you so much for being a guest today on Fruit Bearing Family. And we look forward to connecting you with our audience in the future again. So be blessed. And to our audience out there, listen, keep parenting with purpose and follow up with Ashley. I promise you're going to love what she does. All right, gang, until next time.
Thank you.